my mom used to very often say, "Mera beta lakhon mein ek hai," and that meant that I was unique, I was differentiated. There was something unique about me. And if I just assume for a second that lakhon meant 10 lakh, a million, then being 1 in a million is a big deal. But when you put it in the context of India, in the context of differentiation, if you're 1 in a million, there are 1,300 people just like you, only in India. If I put it in the context of other countries, Israel, if you're 1 in a million, there are only 7 more like you. If I put it in the context of a country like Australia, if you're 1 in a million, there are only 22 like you. But in India, there are 1,300 people just like you, which means that the need for differentiation is much more in a country like India, and India is growing. And you guys are at that stage in your career where any decision you make now is going to matter much more. So as the topic says, career transition, how many of you, just to the show of hands, are managers or have a title manager in your career? And how many of you are individual contributors, technical leaders? And I'm guessing all of you are from the IT industry in some capacity, software or IT organizations. So many of the choices that you will make now will have a big bearing on how your career shapes up. And so I'm here not necessarily to give a lot of gyan, though I think it will sound like a little bit of gyan, but I'll tell you about the things that have worked for me and things that I reiterate within my organization. Within BMC India, we talk a lot about leadership and leadership development. And we're constantly looking for people from within the ranks to grow. And so this is where I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about it. This is all based on one pretext, and that is invisible leaders do not make a difference. If you're invisible, you do not have a following, you do not have the ability to bring about change. And leadership is a lot about change. And so invisible leaders do not make a difference. The second question that it begs then is, what are the leadership qualities that somebody like me, and I'm representative of a typical CEO, what is it that I look in my leaders? And this is a very important question, because when you develop these skills, these are the skills that will get you into those leadership positions. As you become vice presidents, senior vice presidents, and maybe CEOs of your own organizations, I think these are the skills that come in handy a lot. And there are only 6 of them. The first is the ability to build and lead championship teams. As an individual, and by this I mean, I don't mean that because you're a manager and you have the ability to hire people that report into you, then you build teams. Even if you're an individual contributor and you're the architect on a software development project, the teams that you surround yourself in, a lot of those people, when they're attracted to you and your profile, because they think they can learn something from you, you're trying to solve a meaningful problem, then they will attract. So the ability to build and lead championship teams is number 1 on my criteria. Number 2 is the ability to deal with complexity, ambiguity, and change. Everybody wants to know what is the strategy of a company and how are you going to get there. While the CEO of the company might have a good idea about where you're headed, he's never going to precisely be able to tell you this is where we are going. A lot of them will say, hey, we're going to grow our revenues double digits and then we're going to be profitable, and he's going to give you some of those. Those are quite vague answers. Almost every CEO says the same thing. So there's nothing new that you're learning from your CEO. The ability for you to deal with that ambiguity and change in the context of your role is extremely important, because no one will be able to give you the clarity. It is your job then to define the clarity for your team members further down in your ranks. Number 3, the ability to shape strategy and drive alignment. Not everybody in the role is going to be responsible for strategy. Most of the times it's the president of the business unit, or it is the SVP or EVP who's responsible for a function that defines the strategy. But as people that have worked on that particular product or in that particular function for a long time, you know how things work. And the ability for you to define the strategy or influence the strategy in the mind of the leaders that are defining the strategy, I think is a very key skill that you must have. And then driving alignment with your team. So as a leader, you're working up and down. You're defining or shaping strategy with your leaders, but you need to make sure that your teams are completely aligned to be able to execute on that strategy, and not the how, but the why. A lot of times we forget to talk about the why to our team members. We talk about the how, the when, the who, but we don't talk about the why. But what drives people is the why. Why am I doing it? Why do I spend 10 hours a day in my office doing this? What problem is it solving, and for who is it solving the problem? And why is it important? Is it only important to make money? Is it only important because the CEO is committed to a double-digit growth this year? No. We live far more than that. As individuals, when I look at BMC Software, it is not the fact that we are a growing company and that we are doing extremely well in our market that makes me proud. It is the fact that when you pick up the phone and you have a dial tone, it's BMC Software that's working in the past. When you go to an ATM machine and you withdraw cash, the ATM machine dispenses cash, it's BMC Software in the back. When you get on a plane and the plane takes off, the security clearance required for that plane to take off is BMC Software in the back. It touches you guys in very meaningful and everyday things that you do. And so to know the why is generally what aligns more people than the how and the when and how much is it going to cost. Every time I talk about project management, even product managers, a lot of times they're only focused on budgets and project plans. Those are the tactics. You've got to deal with the tactics. But the most important is why are you doing what you're doing? To execute against aggressive goals, and this is true now more than ever before. Because the minute you put a feature out, somebody's copying it in a few weeks. That means that you've got to stay even more aggressive. And unfortunately, as you get into your middle of your career journey, fatigue sets in. You're tired because maybe you've been doing the same thing for 20 years, 15 years, you've been doing the same thing. And you're dealing with a day-to-day problem. This guy resigned, that guy is on vacation, this customer is screaming at me, this release has so many bugs. You're dealing with all of those issues. And at some point you sit back and say, man, I'm exhausted. Again, I got to get back and do the same thing. I think this is what Pinkesh was telling when I walked in about the Poha story. I'm not sure if that was the context. But there is a lot of fatigue in what you do daily. But as a leader of an organization, you cannot have that fatigue show. You cannot have that fatigue show. Because your energy as a leader is going to get amplified in your organization. As a leader, if I'm feeling low, I'm going to bring the energy of my team down. If my energy is high, it's going to bring the energy of my team up. So you have to be very, very mindful of what you're feeling and being in touch with your emotions. This is perhaps things people don't talk about. They don't talk about your emotion and the emotions of the people that work in your teams. But it is the most important element, because while a lot of people think that humans are rational and logical beings, the truth is that humans are emotional beings first. And you react to emotion much more than you react to logic and rational. You will do the right thing because at some point you're going to rationalize why you do what you do. But your first reaction is always from an emotion. It is very important as leaders to stay in touch with your emotion and ensure that you're only propagating positive energy, and the negativity. If you're having a bad day for some reason, stay home. Don't go to work. Stay in your office. Don't talk to people. Don't amplify negative energy. But it goes towards aggressive goals and fatigue. And it's very important. Effectively communicate at all levels. Very important thing again, because your communication is up, down, sideways. Pinkesh was talking about it, I'll probably talk about it as well, that we have, when you become a leader, you've got to work with different functions. Cross-functional leadership becomes very important. How do you then effectively communicate? There are so many times that we get into a sticky situation, and when I'm talking to the leader of the organization, he'll say, but I sent that email out. You didn't read the email. It's not about email. Communication is not one way. Communication is two-way. When somebody acknowledges that I heard what you're saying, not the words of what you're saying, but the intent of what you're saying, and a meaningful dialogue happens, a debate happens, and all perspectives are put on the table and you make a good, calculated decision based on a lot of input from people, then communication happens. And the communication that happens up and down and sideways is different. Communication has to be relevant. And we're always caught in this. I'm particularly caught in this, and many other people who are in leadership positions get caught in this. When you have an all hands in your organization, what is it that the CEO talks about? Revenue growth, profitability, shareholder value, share price. Tell me which of those really matter to an individual engineer. A fresh guy who's just come out of college, which of those motivates him? None of them. None of those things motivate him. So communication at different levels have to be translated to become relevant to the people that you're addressing. And it has to be meaningful where you engage in conversation, engage in debate. A very good sign of a highly effective functioning team is the amount of debates they have. Friction in an organization is desirable. Sometimes you have organizations that are good organizations, you've got a great culture. Why? Nobody argues. That is the sign of a failing organization. That is a sign of a failing organization. Active debate is required for effective communication to happen. And the last element is for you to engage and inspire people. And when I say engage, I mean meaningfully engage, and I'll talk about what this means in a bit. So let me go through this. I do 10 commandments for leaders. I'm going to do this for professionals, a little bit different from what I typically do. The first is reskill or perish. And that's very simply because everything around us is changing at a very rapid pace. How many of you could have 5 years back imagined the life you're leading today? How many of you knew that 5 years later you would not be able to live without WhatsApp? Or that you would reconnect with your friends on Facebook? Or that you're a thought leader because when you tweet, there are 5,000 people that get inspired. How many of you could have imagined this life? No one could have. When you look at software, agile and lean, if somebody says waterfall, you frown on that guy saying, I'm crazy, you're dinosaur age. It's all about agile development, lean development. Scale is unprecedented. You don't talk about hundreds or thousands of users, you talk about millions of users. Capacity is unlimited, infinite. You can scale as much as you want based on when you need to peak, not for all times. When everything around us are changing, then what are the skills required? So many times I get into arguments with so many people who will say, hey, we do this in a certain way. And when you ask, why do you do it in a certain way? The response is, we've always done it like that. Because that's what the process calls for. That's what the process says must happen. But the process may have been defined 10 years back, maybe 15 years back, maybe when waterfall was good, those processes were right. But they may not be right in the current context. The way you did product management may have been different. There was a time, not even far back, I'm talking in the India context now, for software companies like mine. When I took this job on in BMC 9 years back, we had 0 patents from India. And now 13% of our global patents come from India. 30% of ideas that become patents come from India. Now, that's a big transformation. And the reason, when I was to talk to engineers saying, why are there no patents coming from here? The response was, we don't have access to customers. How can you innovate without meeting with customers? But, who is the customer? Is the customer the guy that pays the bill? Or the guy that uses the software? For an R&D organization, it's the second. It's the guy who uses the software. Now, where are our users? All in India. Because every single large company in the world has a presence in India, either directly or through companies like TCS, Wipro, Infosys. So the users are in India. If the users are in India, then why should innovation not happen in India? 60% of our worldwide R&D is here. 90% of the end users are here. So where should innovation happen? And the minute people started to see that through that lens, there wasn't much that needed to be done. We didn't have to put targets or people saying that so many patents this year. It just happened. Because the lens with which people started to see the opportunity completely changed. Completely changed. So reskilling is an important element because whether you're an individual programmer or an architect, the technology stack is changing. What used to be buzzwords 2 years back are no longer buzzwords. Artificial intelligence is just caught on. Machine learning, deep learning, cognitive computing, IoT. Sorry? Electrification? I'm sorry, I've not even heard that term. I got to come up to speed now on that. But there are blockchain. Blockchain is amazing. So if you start to see what is happening, you can't say that I'm a Java programmer and hence I'm a brilliant Java programmer, but I'm done. No. I'm a product manager, but I used to do product management by talking at 2 o'clock in the morning to a customer in New York. You can talk to the customer right here, talk in the next building. The same user for the company that you waited till 2 in the morning to talk to is in the next building. Talk to him. Go have coffee with him. He'll tell you more. Rather than in a controlled environment where you got slides and communication in that context means I'm presenting, you're listening. Product management is about listening, intently listening, and understanding whether your solution, As product guys, we tend to get so emotionally engaged with our products that we think it solves the world's problems. And we forget to talk to the customer and say, tell me what is the problem. We say, hey, you must have a problem. This is my solution. Oh, you don't have a problem. How can you not have a problem? You have a problem, you just don't know about it. Here's the solution. That's not how software should be built. And as product managers, the responsibility of listening intently to come up with what the problem is falls on the product managers.
Voice of the customer.
The voice of the customer. There are many. Everybody has a program like that. But the question is, how effective are they? I think it is as effective as the people conducting the session. Next, resumes are dead. Nobody believes, no key hiring happens through resumes. It happens only through personal branding. If you want to land the job of your dreams, then you must have a very strong brand that everybody is chasing you. You know how I build my management team? I don't go to my recruiters and say I need to hire a director for this position. It is always in my network. It is always in my network somebody whose career I have been following for decades and said, that's the guy I want. He may not be looking for a job, but I want him or her. The chances that that person will come and work for me are zero unless I have a personal brand. Do you think a Johnny Ive would work for anybody except Steve Jobs? Or a Tim Cook would work for anybody except Steve Jobs? No. If you're going to attract top talent, it goes back to rule number one, build championship teams. For building championship teams, you must have the draw to have the best talent in the city or in the country to work for you. And it's not going to happen just like that. You have to focus on your brand. The resume does nothing. And today we have more tools than we ever had, whether you use LinkedIn, Facebook, all of these are great branding tools. Twitter, everybody can become a thought leader. YouTube, everybody can have a channel of your own and you can be a thought leader using YouTube. The question is, how much of your time do you put into your personal brand? And when you don't, then you end up with mediocre teams. And mediocre teams build on bringing more C players into the team, which means that over a period of time, your mediocre team is going to become a loser. And your career depends on that team. Sometimes it is very hard as managers, I heard that so many of you are managers, it's very hard to say, this guy is no longer the right guy in my team, and I must let him go. It's a very hard decision, because you know their families, you know their kids, that person has worked with you for 10 years, but sometimes it's the best decision you can make. I'll tell you a story. There was once a king who was gifted 2 falcons by somebody. Another king gave him 2 falcons. And as the falcons grew, and the king watched them intently, one of the falcons used to fly very high, to soar in the skies, but the other one never got off the branch. Never got off the branch, just kept sitting. And he called many falcon trainers saying that this falcon must fly, why is it not flying? And everybody tried to do everything they could to get the falcon to fly, but the falcon refused to fly. And then the king heard of this farmer, who had nothing to do with falcons, saying that I'll make that falcon fly. So the farmer said, okay, I've tried everything, why don't you go ahead, give it a shot. And the next morning the king saw both the falcons were flying. He called the farmer and said, I'm impressed. What did you do that the other guys was not able to do? He said, all I did was I cut the branch on which the falcon sat. The falcon didn't have a place to sit anymore and had no choice but to fly. Sometimes letting somebody else go on your team that's not right for your team may be the best guy for another team. And that person is not going to look for that other team until you cut the branch off. And so I think there is always this element of loyalty. I should be loyal to them, they have been loyal to me for so many years. But you could be doing the wrong thing for that very person who you think you're doing the right thing for. It's very important that as leaders you make those mature calls to build those championship teams and move. We look at attrition negatively. You should not. The question you should ask is that the guy who left the team, should he have been in the team in the first place? It should be about retention, not attrition. Am I able to retain the people I need to retain? If you lose even one of them, that's a huge loss. But attrition as a number is a useless metric, completely useless metric. I think I'm sure Pinkesh must have talked about this. Product leadership is greater than product management. Product manager is a title. Product management is a job. Product leadership is not. And it is the same difference as between a leader and manager. For that matter, I started saying many of you are in your careers that will take leadership roles later. Maybe you're already in leadership roles, but maybe you're not. Because leadership is not just about doing things right. It is about doing the right things and then doing them right. You need to make sure that you understand the strategy, that you're able to build the teams to execute. You're able to align the teams to that. And when I say teams, a very common misnomer is that a team are the people who report into me or report into my manager. Then that's my team. But that's not your team. Your team is everybody that touches the product that you're going to take to market. That means your marketing guy, your sales guy, your engineers, your support guys, all of them, enablement guys, training guys, all of them are your team. And so many times you think about interactions with them as distractions. I have a customer on fire and the support guy is coming and talking to me while I'm building this cool piece of code. I can't take that call. You got to take that call. You have to make that customer happy. You got to support your team member, not the other programmer in your team, but that support guy who does not have the same manager as you. That's your team. Defining teams is extremely important. It has to be cross-functional because as a result of not doing things right, you end up inconveniencing the customer. You should never be able to do that. There are times when a lot of times, I'm sure this happens in your organization too, people will come up and say, hey look, I'm a developer and I only got 50% of my bonus. I did a great job, look at the code I built, but the sales guys did not bring the number in because of which my bonus got affected. And why should I pay the penalty for that guy not doing his job? Well, if you built a great product in the first place, then maybe you won't be struggling to sell it. You're linked. The entire chain is linked. If you never train the guy right, he's not going to be able to sell. So a lot of times, the concept of a team is not the team that works on a product in a particular division. I only work in marketing, I only work in sales, I only work. Those silos are artificial and must be broken down in every organization for the organization to succeed and for the product to succeed. Because after you deliver the product, technology or delivery of the product is only 20% of the effort. 80% of the effort is after the product gets delivered, when you take the product to market. You've got to be able to run campaigns effectively to differentiate it against your competition. You've got to be able to have the sales guy bring in the money. If somebody's paying for your product, then maybe there is value in it. But just because the customer paid for the product does not mean he got value out of it. Then you need to make sure that the business case on which that particular product was sold was for those objectives achieved. Enterprise sales cycles can be long. It can take you a year, 2 years to get into it. Enterprise projects can be even longer. It can take 2-3 years for the project to implement. We're talking about 5 years. A decision I make today. I put out a release today and I think my job is done. Not done. Because the first customer may not even go live for another 5 years on that. So this is about accountability to self. Changing the perception that you have about what is your job. A job is a job. If you go to 9 to 5, 9 to 6 to do a job, then you need to introspect whether you're really spending your time in the right spot. If you're not excited about it, not passionate about it, you should change. It's perfectly valid to change your career sometimes. I've had friends, a very good friend of mine, an engineer like me, decided when he was 40 that he didn't enjoy programming anymore. He became a photographer. And he's a far better photographer than he was an engineer. He's probably making a lot more money as a photographer than he did as an engineer. It is okay. Careers are also not set in stone. Nothing is set in stone. But when you go in the morning, you have to be excited about what it is that you do. Cross-functional leadership. I think I might have talked a lot about this already, that it is important to understand that you cannot operate in a silo. When you operate in a silo, your success criteria are artificial. My project was delivered on time, in budget. I'm successful. With very good quality. High quality. 3 days. But it's not selling in the market. Nobody's buying. Nobody wants to pay for it. This success criteria is then artificial. You feel good about it. There's nothing for the business, there's nothing for the customers, there's nothing for the shareholders. You've got to be able to think about that. So leadership, this goes back to leadership versus management. If you're a true leader, You tend to collaborate more with people outside of your organization and your customers than you do with people inside your organization. And working in organizations is not always easy, especially as we have grown with the outsourcing in India growing. Talking to somebody might be 12 o'clock at night your time. You might be tired. Maybe you went for a party, you came back, you don't feel like getting on a call. But you made the choice of being in this industry. There are industries that work 9 to 5, but you made the choice to be here. And so thinking about your job differently as a leader is paramount to your success as you move along. This is my favorite topic, intrapreneurship versus entrepreneurship. And again, as I walked in, I know Pinkesh was talking a lot about it, so I probably won't talk about it. But intrapreneurship is both hard but very gratifying and almost as rewarding as entrepreneurship. And one of the reasons I think I have done well in my life is that I'm a failed entrepreneur. I'm a very young entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 25 years old. And by the time I was 30, I was bankrupt and my company was shut. But the lessons I learned, and this wasn't mom and pop. We were going to be, or at least when we started out, we were going to be the next SAP. But it didn't work out like that. But the lessons I learned at that point, they all were very basic. One of the reasons we went bankrupt, we were spending more money than we were making. We were spending $3 million a month while we were making $1 million a month. That doesn't take you too far. That doesn't take you too far. Basics of business is manage your finances. Make sure that money is being utilized right. Now, in defense of the company at that point, it was a dot-com era. And the board of directors who were pumping money into the company were saying, you're not spending fast enough. And since you're not spending fast enough, you're not growing fast enough, spend more. We will give you as much money as you want. And then when the dot-com bust happened, they got cold feet. But you can't just take the run rate down overnight. You can't take it down overnight. Taught me some very, very basic things. Taught me the value of people. It taught me the value of execution. It taught me the value of managing your finances right. The value of building a great team that is a desirable team. All of those lessons were learned in that failure. So, while entrepreneurship is very rewarding, whether you succeed or you fail, intrapreneurship can be too. And so at BMC, we take a lot of pride in the fact that 3 of our products were incubated from India, with concept from India to execution, and we look at market and to the global. And it contributes over $100 million in revenue to the company now. Completely done from here. And I can tell you also that the people who worked on those products did far better in their careers than others who may not have been part of that entrepreneurship stint. You tend to get promoted faster. You tend to get more handcuffs, more shares, more long-term cash, a lot of those, because you know that those are your jewels. And we will never let any of our top talent go anywhere except be in part of our team. They are the ones who innovate. They are the ones who will bring out my next product. Companies always have a responsibility to find the best option they have, which means that if you're an innovator and entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur, a lot of times people get very demoralized. They say, look, I got this great idea, I did a pitch to the right people in the organization, it never got funded. They don't understand the value of my product. It is not about understanding the value of the product. The product, because you're not competing for internal dollars alone. So as an example, if you're building up, innovating, and you've got a new idea and your business plan says, if you give me $2 million over the next 2 years, then I will give you back in revenue $3 million. So to me, it sounds like a great deal. You give me 2, I'm going to give you 3 back in revenue. First thing, it's revenue, it's not profit. What's coming in $2 million is an expense. Okay, fine. But I could have an option where I could go and buy out another company which does very much the same thing that you do. I'm going to spend $20 million there, but I'm going to get $40 million in revenue. And I'm going to acquire top talent, because the guys who started the company are superheroes. I'm going to acquire top talent. I acquire a customer base, which means that there might be customers in there that I can sell more of my products to. All of those things come into play. So when you're so as an entrepreneur, when you do a pitch to a venture capitalist or a private equity firm saying you need money, you have to, the general rule is that you will hear 99 no's before you hear the one yes. And that one yes is one that matters, that's going to take your company and make your company huge. But we're not willing to offer the same to the company. When you make a pitch to the management, and the first time the management says, I don't think so, everybody gets demoralized. This company does not value innovation. My idea was a game changer. It would just change the face of this company. You get into that negative mode. And that negative mode harms you more than it harms the company. The company always has options. But it only harms you because you are not now going to either put more thought into that idea or sell more or come up with the next new idea. This company doesn't value innovation. Not true, guys. Not true. Be ready for 99 no's, whether you're an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. 99 no's before the first yes. And in my own example, while I talk about pride in intrapreneurship, I can tell you that one of the products took me 3 years of internal selling before I got money to put a team around it. 3 years of hearing, no, not going to do it. Me, 3 years, person. So, as entrepreneurs, you've got to become more thick-skinned. And you have to believe in your idea so much that a no does not demoralize you. Execution is critical. Doing the right thing and doing things right every single time. There was an interview that, I don't know, you might have seen, Jeff Bezos was on that interview and somebody asked him this question, how do you hire top talent? And he said, it's very simple, I tend to hire those people that do more things right than they do wrong. More things right than they do wrong. So what does that mean? How do you know that? They said in the history of that person's career, if he has made more right decisions than wrong decisions, then he's my guy. So failure is also accepted, but if you repeatedly fail, then you've got to introspect a little bit as well. Right? Execution is extremely critical, especially when you're in the middle of your career. Because your project success, your product success, the function success, all of those contribute heavily into you getting promoted and getting into those leadership roles that you want to get into. Next, this is something I live and die by. I am the CEO for BMC Software in India, but I am also the Chief Customer Officer for Asia Pacific and Japan. And as Chief Customer Officer, I'm still saying employees first, customers second. Everything else doesn't matter. All the things that we tend to argue about, technology choices, project plan, work breakdown structures, none of it matters. The first thing that matters is, do your employees feel empowered to do the right thing for the customer? And if the answer to that is yes, then your customers will always be happy. You don't have to talk about customers being number one. If your employees are happy and empowered, they will always do the right thing, because I don't know a single person who wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror and says, today I'm going to do the wrong things. Today I'm just going to do nothing but sit and while my time away. Not one person. Everybody gets up in the morning saying that today is going to be the best day of my life because I'm going to do something meaningful. Everybody. And so when you empower employees, I think the customers automatically get taken care of. And so, for me, this has been a mantra, and everybody that I've seen do well in their careers typically tend to spend a lot of time with their employees. And they engage with their employees meaningfully. Which brings me to this one, which is talk about communicating effectively. But I'm also going to talk about employee engagement. When you have a team, and sometimes when you get into these large roles, over hundreds of people reporting into you, it may not be possible for you to pay that kind of attention to everybody. But when you start breaking the teams down, most of the times a manager has no more than 7 to 10 people reporting into that person. Not more than 7 to 10. You can know the 7 to 10 people in your organization extremely well. I get questions like, hey, this guy we need to give him a 20% raise in his salary, otherwise he's going to quit. First of all, the manager should never have let that situation occur where somebody is going to quit because that person needs a 20% raise. If I was a good manager, I would know everything about that person. I would know, for example, that this guy just got married and he is going to have his baby, which means his expenses are going to go up. So rather than wait and not do the raise when he needs the money, I can choose to wait till the guy comes and asks me for money. At which point I say, what a painful employee. All he thinks about is money. Fault is not the employee's. Fault is yours. As a manager, you have to engage deeply. You have to know what's going on. If the guy's father is in the hospital, it's your job then to call the insurance company to make sure he's got no problem when he goes in and checks out of the hospital. Your responsibility as a manager is to understand each. Then there is a big fallacy in my mind of we manage people. You cannot manage people because no two people are alike. You manage a person at a time. What drives her might be different from what drives him. They have different aspirations, different cultural upbringings, different educations. He might get engaged with my company because he loves the fact that we give back to society. And she might engage with me because we are a very women-friendly place and we think about all the stages of a woman's life and make sure they can succeed and that there is no gender bias in my company. People engage differently. And so you cannot manage people. You manage a person at a time and understand them deeply and engage with them deeply. And then communicating effectively, like I talked about, is just making sure that dialogue is happening and it's not one-way communication. Change is the only constant. I guess everybody agrees. Some change is desired and some change is undesirable. And some change you have control on and some change you have no control on. You just don't. In every one of them, you can react to change negatively. Human beings have a crocodile brain. Their first instinct is survival. That, oh, that change happened, am I going to lose my job? Change doesn't happen because somebody wants to fire you. Change happens for the broader good of society. And in that, you have a choice. And you, just like everybody else, is an emotional being. Your first instinct is survival. Oh, this happened. My CEO changed. I have a new manager. Is he going to fire me? Be the change agent that looks at change positively because as a leader, your energy is amplified. Your energy is amplified within your teams. And first, you got to check your own emotion. If you're not feeling good, don't talk to people. If you're feeling good, talk to a lot of people. Change is the only constant, and you've got to become a change agent for you to achieve those leadership positions. Careers are built in pairs and teams. I heard somebody say that we're all looking for a superhero. I think somebody from that. You said it. Everybody's looking for a superhero. There isn't no superhero. And I believe that is true. Not everybody has all the strengths that it takes to succeed in leadership positions. And that means that the model that works is two in a box. I'm an introvert, I want an extrovert. I'm a perception-based guy, I make judgment because I got a gut feeling about what the right thing is. He's a data guy. And the combination of the two, the data may validate or invalidate my gut. If I'm an introvert and I'm really good at project management, I need the extrovert to do the selling for me. He's the guy who's going to bring the money to my project. He is going to help me to hire the best people for my team. Two, careers are built in pairs. Microsoft, Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates. No, not Bill Gates alone. When you start to look through, you'll find that there is always two people with complementary skills, and as a leader, you're most likely a generalist. I used to be a programmer, but I can tell you that I cannot program like the programmers that we hire now, because I haven't programmed in so many years. I cannot be a subject matter expert in everyone. I can't replace my CFO. I don't know more about finance than my CFO does. I don't know more about HR than my HR head does. But in each of those, I have a complementary skill. And the minute I don't empower that leader. The minute I start to put my thoughts on the leader saying, hey, you want to do appraisals? Do it this way. I'm just demotivating the guy for sure, but the reason I hired the guy, which is the expert, I'm not letting that person operate in his expertise. So, careers are built in pairs, hire complementary skills, understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, complement them, and then operate as one. Then, a Superman is possible. Then a superhero is possible. And when you got many of those, this pair is unbeatable, this pair is unbeatable, this pair is unbeatable. Then you got a world-class team. Then you got a world-class team. And so in my mind, careers are built in pairs and teams, and there is no single person in the world who is that Superman or Spider-Man or Batman who is going to go and take a company to the epitome of its success. Only teams and only complementary pairs and leadership skills can do that. So those are the 10 things that I tend to talk a lot to people who aspire to be leaders within my organization. These are things that have worked extremely well for me personally, and I wanted to share these thoughts with you.